Let's talk about the resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth for a minute. And the question's been put to me, what are the three top evidences for the resurrection? I'd like to give you three facts that lead to a conclusion. And if I were to say what is the best reason for believing in the resurrection, it is the best explanation to these basic facts, all right? Here's the first basic fact. And when I say basic fact, I'm not saying because this is in the Bible. I'm saying these are facts that, on the main, historians acknowledge as being solid points that you could depend on as being historical facts. First, that Jesus of Nazareth died on a Roman cross. Okay, first point, he's dead. Now, we know this from the primary source historical documentation of the nature of his execution. We know this from the fact that Roman guards pronounced him dead. We know this because he was packed in 100 pounds of spices, according to the record, as was the custom, and wrapped in cloth and laid in a tomb. All right? So there is no chance here that Jesus just swooned, he fainted, and revived, because you don't hang on a cross for 3 hours in the cold April air naked, having been subjected to what Jesus was subjected to, the beatings and the torment and the crucifixion, and then the spear going through his side, and having Romans pronounce you dead and then packed in all these spices and then put in a cold tomb, and a couple days later you are feeling better. That just doesn't cut it. Jesus was dead. Okay, that's the first historical fact. Here's the second historical fact. That tomb in which he was laid was empty. Jesus' body wasn't there. Listen, if Jesus' body was there, there would be no resurrection story, because the account of the resurrection started the early church, and all the people who were the enemies of Christ, and there were plenty of them, they were the majority, actually. This is how Jesus got killed. They were the ones who were in power. They would have had every motive to produce the body if it could be produced, and they didn't do it. There were only three groups that might have stolen that body, and that was the Jews, the Romans, or the disciples. Did the Jews want Jesus dead or alive? Dead. Did the Romans want Jesus dead or alive? Dead. They had no motivation for stealing the body. The only one that might have had a motivation is the disciples, and they didn't have any motivation either. Because if Jesus was dead in that tomb, it's because he was executed by the religious leaders and the political leaders, and they were next in line for the same reasons Jesus was executed. To promote what Jesus promoted was to suffer the same fate as he suffered. So you have a dead Jesus, now you have an empty tomb. And you have no motivation for the disciples to steal that body, because that would just get them into trouble. In fact, they would know they were lying. If they lied, if they stole, they would know they were lying. They would know that this story was a hoax. Why would they suffer what they did for a hoax? That doesn't make any sense. And the third point was the disciples actually had an experience that they took to be the experience of the risen Christ, and this is what started the early church. And this also, historians cannot dismiss. Something happened to these guys. They all acknowledge this on the main. There are exceptions, but this is an established fact of history. They had an experience of some sort. Now the question is, what experience did they have? Well, maybe they saw a vision because they really loved Jesus and they really missed him, and so they had a visitation. People have visions, apparently. A couple problems with this, by the way, is that when people have visions of a dead one, they know it's a vision. They don't mistake the vision for a resurrected friend. They say, hey, I saw my lost wife. She appeared to me. They don't say, my wife raised from the dead and she's walking around. Okay. Secondly, if this is a vision, visions, hallucinations happen in the mind. They don't happen out there. If you're having a vision, I can't stand next to you and see your vision because it isn't out there. It's in your head. It's like a dream. It's first person private. So the question is, how did all these disciples have the same vision in their heads at the same time about the same person in multiple locations under multiple circumstances? And some of these people who had this vision allegedly were people who had no motive for seeing Jesus alive. Saul of Tarsus, for example, or James, the half-brother of Jesus. He wasn't even a believer till after the resurrection. So they were skeptics and opponents. Well, the hallucination thing doesn't seem to work. If you got a dead Jesus, if you got an empty tomb, and you have apostles who are spreading the word that they have seen Jesus risen from the dead, and they are putting their lives on the line day after day after day, year after year for that testimony, what is the best explanation for that? There is no other explanation that is adequate than the one they gave. He has risen. We have witnessed it. That's their message, and it's the message they took to the grave. No other answer to those three facts, the dead Jesus, the empty tomb, and the appearances to the disciples, no other answer makes as much sense as a simple resurrection. He is risen.